Hello everyone and welcome. Make a cup of your favorite drink and get comfortable because this is a wonderful time for new stories from Yellowcat. Send your own stories in the comments below and maybe they'll be in our new video. Today we have new amazing stories, so subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Let's get started. Experts in law of Reddit. Which legal defense or defendant blew a case the funniest in your opinion? Not a lawyer, but before he passed away, a friend of mine was a fairly well-known DUI attorney in Westchester County. The NYSP arrested him for DWI after discovering his client dozing off in his car. He was over the limit, and for it to be deemed a DUI at that time, the keys had to be in the ignition. The keys had to be in the ignition even though the car was off. My friend calls the arresting trooper to stand and asks him 3 times if he is genuinely swearing under oath that he saw the keys in the ignition of the car that my friend's client was driving at the time of the arrest with just his 2 tiny trooper eyes. "Yes, counselor," replies the soldier. In court, my friend claims that when a police officer refers to a lawyer as counselor, what he really means is a-hole. Nailed him after giving him 3 chances to walk it back. You're aware that my client drives a Prius. Whew! Case closed. Edit. After requesting money on Facebook to pay for some medical bills, he kind of vanished from sight. The way the request was worded suggested that the illness had struck suddenly, leaving him unable to practice and in need of assistance paying the bills. Which is funny because he railed against Obamacare virtually every day after Obama was sworn in, and then he disappeared. I thought he had passed away. I contacted his former company, which was a 2-man operation with him as one of the named partners about a year ago. They denied ever knowing him. I shrugged and forgot about it until this thread. Then I googled first name last name disbarred. Ding ding ding, for a few dubious actions in 2017, he was disbarred. Doesn't exactly fit the bill, but had an arrogant police officer backtrack and try to justify his report he wrote. Was driving down a 2-lane road when my phone rang. Being the upstanding citizen I am, I pulled it out of my cargo shorts pocket and passed it to my passenger. About 5 seconds after that, I noticed the flashing lights behind me and think, OS, better pull over for him to pass, as is the rule in Canada. By the time I had shifted to neutral and applied my parking brake, he was at my window screaming, "Where's the phone?" I explained that my passenger is holding it, as he was currently on the phone talking to had called. He demanded the phone, and when I explained what had happened, he refused to believe anything. Ended up with me saying, "Then I guess I'll see you in traffic court," as I was just passing off my phone, not actually using it. He just couldn't be reasoned with. Long story short, when called to stand before the judge, the Crown read the statement, which was along the lines of, driver was holding the phone at arm's length to the right of him. I simply stated, I don't know anyone who holds their phone at arms or to the right to text/call, but it sure fits the bill of handing it to my passenger. Cop ended up saying he meant in front of steering wheel and just meant arm held out. Didn't fly. Ended up trying to get me on that holding my phone was in use of. Judge ended up saying that holding my phone to pass off was no different than holding a Timmy's coffee. Acquitted me of all charges. Turns out the cop was not well liked by the sheriffs there, and I think that's what they're called when they work there, and this has happened a few times before. Not trying to make any police officers look bad. Everyone has their bad apples in their department. He was probably just one of them. I was in court for a cattle call foreclosure docket. Many cases heard all at the same time. There were so many cases on the docket that we were in the largest courtroom in the courthouse. Probably 100 people were in the room. One of the first cases called involved an especially notorious foreclosure defense attorney. The first words out of his mouth were a demand that the judge recuse himself. The attorney claimed that the judge's wife either worked for or owned stock in, I can't remember which, this was a few years ago, the plaintiff bank. He was real about it too, very pompous and arrogant. Well, this peed the judge off pretty fiercely. The judge turned purple and was struggling to control himself. The judge said, if you're gonna come in here and make accusations like that, you had better be sure you have your facts straight. Apparently, the lawyer was dead-a wrong. I sincerely thought he was gonna jump over the bench and throttle this guy. So he blew the case in the essence that he was stuck with a judge that he had thoroughly peed off. But the best part is that over the course of the last few years, this attorney has had several bar complaints against him, been ordered to take anger management classes, and most recently received an emergency suspension, which will likely become a full disbarment, and was forced to file bankruptcy. How far the mighty have fallen. I worked as an investigator for insurance. For those who don't know, workers' compensation attorneys are generally the lowest of the low. You don't need to be good at practicing law to be passable as a comp lawyer. Your rates are set by the board. It's a place where the S'est in class from the S'est law schools tend to land. Over the course of 2 weeks, I had hours of video showing this guy fixing a roof. It was a big building. This guy works for more than 8 hours a day, climbing ladders and reaching the roof. Each day, I'd say I got at least 3 hours of video shot over the course of the day. I turned off the camera when my guy wasn't in view. When we arrive at court, the corporate attorney is getting me and the other investigator ready to testify, telling us that establishing that the man on the roof is, in fact, our man will be the most difficult task. He was, of course, but we needed to confirm that we had checked every box. He was identified by us at our guy's house. He was operating a vehicle that belonged to our guy. He fit our guy's description exactly. Above all, we had to identify him in front of the magistrate. We get in, the lawyer introduces the video, and the guy's lawyer, without prompting, says, we'll stipulate to the fact that this is the claimant in the video. Our attorney is in disbelief. The largest obstacle has been surmounted. The man's attorney then launches into a long and intricate defense of his ostensibly partially disabled client who works full-time as a roofer, including, it doesn't matter that he wasn't paid. His claim that he was too disabled to work makes it irrelevant. He was only doing it as a favor. The methods and equipment he's using make it clear that he's not a professional. We were unaware of his activities during that period since I switched off the camera when he was out of sight. Surveillance of his client was a violation of federal wiretapping laws. Nope. Surveillance of his client was a violation of the state's harassment and stalking laws. Nope. Following the failure of all that, he attempted to claim that we lacked evidence proving the person in the video was his client. He tried to retract his statement and claimed that he didn't say that when it was brought up that he had already agreed to that fact. The magistrate ordered the court reporter to recite his order. I don't care about you, lawyer Redface said, but, Your Honor, that isn't fair. Nor was this some teenage punk. The man, who was in his 50s, had been doing this for 20 to 30 years and was still not very good at it. However, he is widely recognized as the best WC attorney in the area. Just remember, kids, when hiring a lawyer, billboards can be purchased by S lawyers too. Which moment at work made you think, I don't get paid enough for this? I used to work for a company that produced lifelike artificial trees, but they also had a live plant department that installed, maintained, and rotated flowers and plants for nearby businesses. I oversaw the small trees department where I was in charge of pruning branches and erecting the skeleton of trees and plants that ranged in heights from 3 to 8 feet in order to get them ready for the artificial leaves that were the responsibility of the following production stage. Although I occasionally managed helpers, the company, in an effort to save costs, would typically just let me handle everything on my own. The front office staff, who handled paperwork, customer service, and order processing, was overpaid, avaricious, and incompetent in their work. The company was also terribly managed. The owner of the business spent most of his time halfway across the nation. He was a horrible micromanager, so the whole operation actually operated more smoothly when he wasn't around, and his extremely dim-witted, silver-spooned, and incompetent son managed the business in his absence. The owner's brother worked as the IT specialist. He was an antiquated dinosaur who didn't know about the modern technologies we used and was only in the state for a few months each year, spending the rest of his time at his spacious home in the Virgin Islands. Not only was I carrying out my own duties, but I was also assisting the salesman on at least 60% of my orders by having to locate them and either clarify or rectify their work. In addition, I would take over and manage shipping in the event that the unreliable shipping manager failed to appear or was understaffed. I also had to carve out time in my workday to make the shipping crates for the larger trees, since I was the only one who would do that. Overall, I played a key role in multiple departments and tried my hardest to ensure that everything went as smoothly as possible. One Friday, however, the shipping system failed completely with no connection at all, and nobody knew why. It was a big deal because Friday was the day that the majority of our shipments were scheduled to be sent out, and the IT guy was out of town and unreachable. I was aware that someone would be held accountable for it, probably my friends in the shipping department, and that someone would be yelled at by an idiot wearing the tightest slacks imaginable, the owner's son. I decided to try to fix it during my lunch break, and after making a lot of phone calls and playing around with the outdated but recently updated software the owners had installed to track our internet usage, I eventually succeeded. The entire shipping and production team was relieved and grateful that we were able to ship all of the products for the week. After working on solving that problem for hours, I finished later than everyone else and took my lunch break. While I was enjoying my soup and listening to a podcast, the owner's son stormed into the room looking angry and flushed. He gets all worked up and starts screaming at me about how I screwed up the shipping system and how they couldn't get anything done all day. That I wasn't acting like a team player and he didn't get why I would deliberately harm the business. I attempted to clarify to him the nature of the issue stemming from the update he had installed earlier. Since the IT specialist was unavailable and there was no other course of action, I resolved the issue on my own, and it was thanks to me that we were able to ship everything, including his large order, as the avaricious individual had chosen to serve as both a co-owner and CTO, in addition to a salesperson on the biggest jobs. I don't care what happened, I'm your boss, and I say what happened, was something he repeatedly said while yelling at me during the remainder of my lunch break. He was so messed up and furious that he would not listen to anything I said. I simply said whatever, shook my head, and returned to my department where I spent the remainder of the day not assisting anyone else. I brought 2 pieces of paper in with me the following day. One was a raise request in which I meticulously outlined my job's title responsibilities and how I exceeded them, all the while emphasizing how I improved the company's performance in other departments whenever I could. Not that I was demanding much more, but I was definitely not being paid enough to be scolded for things that I not only didn't do, but also went above and beyond to assist with fixing. I reminded them of my impending 2-week vacation by handing them my 2-week notice when they stated that paying me an additional $2.50 per hour wasn't in the budget. I told them good luck with their in-training since I would no longer be assisting them. To cover all the other work I would be doing in addition to filling my position, they had to hire 4 people. They were just bad people. It wasn't about the money, even though it was obvious that a raise could have been granted by the budget. Glad I got out. In my previous position as a member of a software development team, our department manager was moved to a different area of the company for an absurd reason, and we were left under the management of the finance department. Although the original person was not tech-savvy, she trusted us and stood up for us. We really liked her. It was even worse if contractors came in because they would give optimistic estimates to make themselves look good and then have their work fobbed off on us because they were too busy. Then we would have our longer estimates rejected and then get in trouble for not meeting the contractor's estimate, all despite the fact that we knew the system far better. The finance team would always ask why our estimates were so long regardless of the justification we provided. When a systems development manager was hired to oversee us, we felt as though there would be a significant shift. However, he was under the finance department's supervision. One of my coworkers was accused of egregious misconduct when she failed to respond to an email sent after hours. Since all of my emails were internal and we couldn't access them while at work, I figured that since I was feeling down, I would take a vacation. Up until then, I had only taken vacations twice a year, once in the summer to spend time with my wife and once in the summer to visit my family in Ireland. This was unique because I was in need of it personally. We received an email at the same time informing us of a holiday freeze until a specific project was completed. Later, I made the decision, F this company, they're not paying me enough for this crap. I immediately began applying for jobs elsewhere, as did presumably 75% of the development team. On the same day that I handed in my notice, 10 more people did the same and 5 more the following day. F that project and that company. They didn't finish it on time. Out of about 20 of us, only about 5 remained. The tech director reportedly had to give a presentation on staff retention after the sys-staff manager was urged to step down, which is absurd from what I've heard. Things got worse and they learned nothing. 6 months later, the company lost almost all of its major clients. Another 6 months later, it closed for good. Guys, thank you for all the support and likes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. See you next time.